So good evening. Welcome to the Clovis Unified Family Resource Center workshop for sibling support. We are so grateful to have Nikki, Donnelly, and Liza Stack here to give their years of experience both as siblings and as professionals working in special education. So a little bit of housekeeping. As I said, we are in meeting format, so you can unmute, you can have your camera on, camera off, whatever you feel comfortable with. We want you to be comfortable. And as we're going through housekeeping real quick, I'm going to launch a poll because we'd really like to know what your role is, why you're here. And I just launched that. And then real quickly as well, there is a link to the handouts tonight that I will post in the chat after Nikki and Liza get started. If you don't capture something tonight, don't worry about it. I'm going to be sending you an email tomorrow that will contain a certificate of attendance if you happen to need that, if you're a professional. It'll also have the link to this recording. It will have the link to the handouts. All the resources from tonight you will get in an email tomorrow to the email that you registered with. If for some reason you don't receive that, you all should have my email from registering with Zoom. Feel free to reach out to me, Leanne, at the Family Resource Center. I will take care of you. Lastly, at the end of the evening tonight, you will, when you close out Zoom, a link to a survey is going to pop up. Please take a moment to fill that out. The Family Resource Center, I work off grants, and it really is important to me to know if the workshops we're doing are meeting your needs. And so it's short. It'll just take you a couple minutes, but it really is important to me to have that feedback and to know if I'm supporting you well. All right, so let's see, I'm going to end the poll, and I don't see an option to share out, but it looks like,
I got it.
Can you share it? Thank you. All right, so we can see who everybody is. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nikki and Liza. Thank you.
Great. We got a couple siblings, parents, and professionals. Thank you for coming. We appreciate you. I will say, if you can, when you're not speaking, if you don't mind making sure you're muted, and then feel free to either raise your hand, would probably be the best during the session. We're going to have some breakout rooms, so you will have time to talk and ask questions to Liza and I, and then we'll have questions at the end also. But if you have something that urgently you want to address now, maybe hit the little raise your hand button, or if you can't find it for whatever reason, just speak up and we will address you. So,
and the chat is open too, so put it in the chat and I will be monitoring that. So
perfect.
There you go.
Thanks, Leanne. And so welcome. Thank you for coming. Liza and I don't know, Leanne, what's this well, I think I presented it a couple years before Liza joined in with me. So we look forward to this. Go ahead, Leanne.
I was just gonna say, I think we're on year 5. So yeah, because we did some in person, and then now we're doing virtual. So yeah, thank you.
Great,
ladies.
Great. This week we call this just an introduction to Sibs. Introduction to Sibling and Sibs. You're going to hear us refer to tonight. Are the siblings of individuals with disabilities or additional support needs. So I'm Nikki, I'm one of your presenters. We're going to introduce ourselves more later tonight. And then Liza is also here with us. Our contact information here, we're both from California Sibling Leadership Network, which is a chapter off of the National Sibling Leadership Network. So there's actually a pretty good group with I think more than half the states in the US having a chapter. So we are here to share with you tonight. So a brief overview, we're going to talk about our stories, then your stories, and then kind of what we know. There's a ton of research out there about siblings and the relationships and the concerns, the needs, the opportunities, the support, like what every sibling wish you knew, you know, that I think that's the exact name of one of the handouts that we have for you that you'll get. So, and then there'll be time for questions at the end. All right, so we'll start. I'm Nikki. I actually used to work at Clovis Unified until I went on to Illinois, and now I'm in Oregon, and, but still very, very connected with Leanne and the Family Resource Center, and have throughout this maintained my time with California Sibs. So, oh, I'm looking in the chat, sorry. So I am the proud older sister, and then I also have another sister, a sister older than me, to my brother Robbie. He is, he was our bonus baby in the family. He's 10 years younger than me. Yeah, we joke he had 3 moms. So Robbie has intellectual disability and autism. So, you know, growing up, I think his autism was kind of as prevalent, what we kind of saw the most of. Now he's got such amazing coping skills that we look at more the intellectual disability being his biggest challenge. So, but Robbie has, you know, he's my buddy. He lived with me for 10 years until I decided, as siblings, we say selfishly, decided to go to school. I was working my doctorate degree in Illinois. So he went to live with my parents in Alabama. But before that, he lived with me for 10 years. And I growing up and living with me and with my kids, the picture in the middle here, this my daughter's graduation, and then my son's got the sunglasses on, and my brother's between the two of them in the back. But they are, you know, he's not only impacted my life, but my children's life. And, you know, seeing the empathy and what, you know, my children's view of the world has changed because of Robbie. But yeah, Robbie loves cars. The upper left, he's at the LA Auto Show, and he loves country music. We go to concerts, and yeah, and the 2 pictures down in the bottom right are actually my cousin's boys who went to Disneyland with us and used to do a lot of things with us. So he's also impacted their lives. So I feel very fortunate to come from a family, a very large extended family that has just accepted Robbie and included him very meaningfully within all our family activities. So yeah, he'll be coming back to live with me soon. I just have to pry him away from my parents first. So all right, now Liza.
Okay. Sorry, I was trying to find the little red dot to help you out there, but okay, so this is kind of a little bit about my story. Let's see here if I finally figured it out. Spotlight, let's see if we could do this. I don't know, that's drawing on him. Sorry. Okay, so I will get rid of that. But this one down in the corner here, oops. Sorry.
Okay. You're doing fine, Liza. I totally feel your pain, friend. Just when we think we're totally got it handled. Yeah.
I know.
That scribble's going to be on every page now, just so you know.
Oh, is it? Let's see here. Then maybe if I undo that.
Go ahead. It won't hurt anything.
Yeah, we got a friendly group here. They're not going to be mad over a scribble. They're understanding.
So this on the bottom here is me with my brother. We went to Shaver Lake together. He is also 10 years younger than me. And so this is my sister here to the right. It's very much the three of us right now, doing a lot of, managing his care and things like that. Right above the picture of my sister and my brother is a picture with my brother and our mom. She passed several years ago. They were very, very close. And so that really kind of started the major shift for him in his life. Over here to the right was my sister, my brother, and our stepdad. This is when we brought our mom out to see. And our stepdad has since passed a little over a year ago. And so that started the next major change for our brother. The house that he was living at, he was told he could no longer live there. And so he is, for the first time in his life, living on his own. And part of that was trying to figure out too, like, does he, I have a lot of dogs. I have a very small house. Like, do you want to live with me? Do you want to live on your own? And that was a really emotional time when we were going through that. We also lost my other sister, Angela, to the right here during that time, and we lost our grandma. So he's had a lot of grieving during this process and a lot of also growing. And so we're trying to do our best, my sister Rhiannon and I, to support him and help him get the life that he wants for himself. So he is a big Pixar Disney fan. And so he uses some of those themes as we're getting through all of this over the years. And one of them was Up, the movie Up. And the phrase from that is adventure is out there. And so really trying to embrace things that are difficult, not wanting things to change, being upset about loss and hurt and what that means, but also trying to see what's beautiful and adventurous through this new process. And then outside of that too is he really loved the movie Luca. And so he signs off every night when he texts us and he says, all is well, underdogs. And so we had a whole conversation about the underdogs in that story and what it means, and exploring the unknown and unfamiliar territory and being an outsider and like all of those different things. And so he's really kind of embraced that. And so that's our good night to each other every night. So yeah, he's living on his own, and we're trying to get him all the support so that he can be as, independent as he wants. And, sometimes that's a little bit challenging too, because I'm also worried about his health. And so, yeah, anyhow, we're trying to make sure he gets to make choices in his life, but also trying to make sure he has the information to help make those choices that are best for him. So that's a little bit about our story. And I will move on to the next one. So the next one is breakout rooms. You listen to Nikki and I have a chance to kind of share a little bit about our lives, and we wanted you all to kind of have 1 to 2 minutes each, if you feel comfortable, to share with each other about what brought you here tonight. So, are you here as a sibling, as a parent, as a professional? What's your story, and kind of what do you want to get out of tonight? So we're going to break out in just a second, and then we have several minutes for that, and then we'll rejoin. You want to add anything, Nikki?
Nope. So we'll have 2 breakout rooms. Liza will be in one and I will be in the other one with you.
We had a mix of parents and professionals, and I think one of the things I was just ending with, that I was just saying after hearing a couple of them, was to be aware of for the professionals too, to be aware of all the different levels and complexities that are going on in somebody's home, that it's not always just one thing, that there might be multiple things to pay attention to, and that might be affecting all members of the family as well. And, you know, there's one of our parents was mentioning just the pressures of trying to navigate and work through these different issues that you're faced with, and do that in a way that takes care of the people you love, but also you need to remember to take care of yourself through that process too, which could be really difficult to do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we had, we kind of talked, and I said I'd talk about it more when we came to this big group, but we had one of the parents in our group was really concerned about the future for the support that her typical children are going to be left with needing to give to her child that has more support needs. And and she used the word burden. I use the word burden because I don't know another word for it, but it's that responsibility, you know, that of you know, trying to live our own lives as well as supporting somebody that we love very much, you know. So but yeah, that, and so I was starting to share a little bit about our sibling support guide that we're doing, and it's the OSK, and we call it, an OSK stands for the oh shit kit, because literally we get adult siblings showing up, they find us and they're like, oh shoot, right? What do? I know nothing about the sibling world. I mean, know nothing about the world of disabilities. If their family passed away unexpectedly, and one of our board members had to step down because that happened, and she's pretty well connected and was still in panic mode trying to figure out housing and insurance and, you know, all kinds of stuff. So we're working with several agencies. Probably the biggest one would be the State Council on Developmental Disabilities, and we're doing a sibling support guide that has like a legal chapter, a finances chapter, and all kinds of good stuff coming. It's just a long process to get all the information into one.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding the group. Were you going to say something to that?
Oh, I just was going to say real quick too, that I just put in the chat a link. You know, the Family Resource Center, I serve birth to 22 in Clovis Unified, right? And there are family resource centers all across the state. But I wanted to point out from Nikki, thank you for mentioning that, often as adult caregivers though, of adults, you know, that has its own, you know, challenges and you have needs. And so I put in the chat, Valley Caregiver Resource Center, which is here in, you know, Fresno County. But I'm sure they have something similar. They have a resource guide for adult caregivers as well. And you can always reach out to me if someone needs that, and I can share that. But you're so right, Nikki and Liza. It's a whole different world of being in that sort of support role, right? Where, you know, you might take them to an appointment once in a while, or, you know, help out, you know, mom and dad with that role. And then all of a sudden you are that, you know, leadership role. And so, but I'm going to give a quick plug too. I always encourage parents when their children are younger, keep that thought process in mind, right? That why I'm always encouraging families to have a binder with all that important information, because in cases of emergency, you know, even, you know, heaven forbid, you're in a car wreck or something, and, you know, you just aren't physically able for a time being even, you know, what information would you need to have someone know to be able to step in and start doing what you do. What are those important, accounts, the contacts, think about that support that your child would need if you weren't there to do it, even if it was temporary, or heaven forbid long-term, but think about that, parents, because again, you just want to be planning ahead. So.
Yeah. And, when I've been pretty involved because, I was a special ed teacher. So I was really involved with my brother as he got older and I started attending his IEPs, I think when he was in high school, which if you guys are open to that, and the Sibs are open to attending IEPs with their sibling and then I would encourage that was very helpful for me. And as much as my brother lived with me for 10 years, but probably the last 3 years that he lived with me, my parents lived just next door. So I thought I got it, piece of cake when they decided they were moving to Alabama, and then they left and I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know all of his health history when I took him to the doctor. And so, yeah, that's kind of what this stuff that you don't even necessarily think about. So, but.
Yeah. And, some of the other things that came out of our conversation too is just, so the professionals that were in the room were there because they want to start support groups, which is really cool. So they're looking at doing something like that. And then also just the individuals looking for support groups at different levels. So whether that be, for an adult Sib or 5.5-year-old kid, what are the options across the lifespan to support Sibs?
Great. Yeah, our group primarily focuses on adults, so 18 and up. And we do monthly, we call them meetups, and they're all virtual. And some are oh, thanks, Leanne. Leanne dropped it in the chat for you, but I think our December one is open to parents and professionals as well, correct? Because that's on financial. We have a guy that comes in and does webinar type things on finances and looking at trusts and so forth. So,
and then correct me, Leanne, wasn't there a Sib shop that what used to be in Clovis and maybe is no longer connected directly, but
right, Clovis Unified is not hosting them anymore, but DSAC, the Down Syndrome Association, they are doing in-person Sib shops, and that is not just for families affected by Down syndrome. That's for any disability, siblings with ages 8 to 12, I believe. And again, if you need that information, feel free to reach out to me at the Family Resource Center.
Yeah, good. All right.
Okay, shall I share my screen again?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Okay.
All right, so why think about Sibs? Obviously, you guys are here, so you've kind of somewhat asked yourself that question already. So if we were to assume that each person has one sibling, we could then estimate that there are 4.5 million siblings of individuals with special needs in the United States. Now, we know some people may not have a sibling, some may have 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever siblings. So that could be very underestimated. But so essentially, there's a lot of us out there, right? We're this very, I don't know, it's like this hidden culture group of people, I think. But so there's a lot of us out there, and we're fairly new to the being organized and getting to understand each other more, which makes sense because if you look in the history, it just started more recent in our history that people with disabilities are no longer just institutionalized for their life, right? So this is a fairly recent topic and need where we look at people with disabilities being in the home with us. So yeah, it's new. And I've been like screaming for years at legislative people when I can get a hold of them, like, you need to listen, because as this, autism alone, not if you don't look at any other disabilities, but autism alone, that wave of increase of people with autism is coming, or is like, they're now starting to age, right? And exit the formal education system and need additional support needs. So, and they likely, the majority have siblings, right? So, as our parents become older, then the care can come on to us. So, we fondly consider ourselves the club sandwich generation, where many of us may be raising our own kids and caring for our parents as they age, and also caring for siblings. This is one of my favorite quotes. It's very true, and it's actually research-based, the statement. If you want to assure the long-term positive outcome for a family member with a disability, invest in their brothers and sisters. We'll talk about that a little more, where, we have as siblings I think it's on the next slide, actually. Go ahead, Liza. So we have, as Sibs, we spend the most time with our brothers and sisters, right? Where we could literally, if our sibling is a year older, like we can have our entire life. Well, parents, depending on the age that you've had them, like, you've had a life without somebody with a disability in your family, perhaps. But we will spend the most time with the person with a disability in their lifetime and ours. So, and no person has a greater impact, because we spend so much time. We spend so much time with our sibling. I never thought of my brother having a disability. I didn't understand it, and I was fairly older, and but he was just my best buddy. and so that sibling relationship is a very unique relationship, typical or atypical, so and then one thing that kind of really hit home as my brother started getting older is that our experiences parallel that of your parents, of you guys as parents. I have hopes and dreams for my brother. I had hopes of dreams of having a brother, right? And my brother is, I don't have another brother. He's it. I have a sister, but I would love to have that relationship with my brother as a typical brother. But so ours parallels the needs of parents, and there just really aren't a whole lot of resources out there for siblings comparing to parents. So, and then our concerns go across the lifespan. So, and and I say concerns, but I remind you that we're also going to talk about opportunities, because I would not change it for the world to have a brother with autism. It's made me such a better person. But there is differing needs and different ways of approaching needs and concerns and support across the lifespan. And we have a great slide at the end that'll that will outline that for you. And you're up, Liza.
Here. Okay, so more than 1 million children and youth have a need for support and services that goes beyond what typical kids might need when it comes to family support. So the number of children with support needs, they grow up to be adults with support needs. So when we're looking at that more than 1 million number, looking at the impact that that's going to have on families throughout California, almost 7 in 10 adults with disabilities live with their parents or guardian. So I think some of the things we've mentioned is that there's a good percentage of the Sibs that are going to become caretakers, and more than 1 in 3 parents are saying that their children are actually planning on doing that. I fall into that category. I was one of the Sibs that always knew that when my brother got older, when I got older, and my parents weren't able to help provide that support, that was going to be my role stepping into that. I didn't realize it was going to be coming as soon as it did, you know, and so one of the things that I really learned from this is that word planning, right? It says children are planning to take care of their sibling. So I thought my family had done the planning. We found out, unfortunately, that everything that we thought was supposed to be in place to secure protection and resources for my brother throughout his lifetime aren't there. So have those conversations within your family and start talking about what those things mean, because it's not enough to just say that they're planning to help be a caretaker. There's so many other things that need to happen in those conversations, and like even like all those documents and everything that Nikki was talking about earlier, and all the passwords and codes, and who do we call for this and what do we do, and even just she mentioned the financial meeting that we're going to be having. My God, learn how to figure out the financial planning for your family, because it can, if somebody dies and you're not expecting it and things aren't in place in the way that you thought they were, it could really go sideways. So I'm just trying to educate you all in the room. Please do that for yourselves. Plan now.
And Liza, one of the things too that I'm sure many families have heard of, or maybe they haven't, I will share the resource as well in a moment, but there is a new law taking effect January 1st, 2023 in California that is going to change conservatorship law. And so, you know, pro or con, I mean, there's a lot of families that feel both sides, right? But the fact is it's going to be harder to conserve somebody. And so I will share out a great article that ARC of California put out that really clearly listed what those changes are going to be. But again, that, you know, that, like you said, that affects the whole family. And so I will share that. I'm also going to share out, I don't have one planned right now, but Parents Helping Parents in San Jose has a conservator workshop coming up. And I will share out that resource as well. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. It's really helpful to know that information. You know, I think sometimes you're in an IEP meeting, and when your student gets to be the age of transition and the conversation is, you know, the question on the IEP is like, are they conserved or not? And it really makes it feel and seem really black and white. And there's a much broader continuum of what you can do to give as much independence and independent choice for the individual in your family, as well as protect them. So those decisions are personal and up to the family and everything like that. But it is important to know that there are other options and what that could look like.
Yeah, I feel like this is something we could have a whole 3-hour workshop on just this alone, and the lessons we've learned from other siblings, and like, don't do this, you know, and the pros and cons of conserving, right? Because there could be one sibling shared something one time like, no, the medical doctor wouldn't, because they wouldn't do a procedure because they were afraid of the liability, because they weren't conserved and didn't have the cognitive capacity to make the decision, and the doctor wasn't comfortable, except it was. So there's so many things out there on this topic that you guys, you know, it's worth diving into.
Yeah,
so
definitely. And my brother is not conserved, and there's always, you know, like, please everything will be okay. You know? But also want him, you know, to make those. Okay, so let's see here. So some of the most compassionate people walking this planet are brothers and sisters of people with disabilities or with special needs. So you know, some of these things we've talked about, there's one might make an assumption that there's a lot of weight and expectations and things for the SIB, but there's also a lot of research to show that there are wonderful positive outcomes. And so we just want to make sure that we're presenting both of those sides, both of those pieces of information for you all tonight, so you can kind of see the different ways that somebody may be affected, what may influence the outcomes in your family. One of the more important things, I think, is in your role as either a parent or a professional or a sibling, a SIB, is to kind of like just be attentive to the situation, look for the concerns and foster the opportunities, I would say, and then be proactive in both communication and action. So if whatever role you fall in your, you know, that you sit, try and consider how you would address each of those.
Yeah, that's something you can go on. That quote's very important to remember as we go in. You know, first we're talking about the concerns, because I feel like that's what most parents come. They don't, when parents come to me, it's because they're concerned, you know, how do I support all my children? They don't come to me and say, come to us and be like, we're so excited they have these opportunities, you know? So I think parenting tends to be a guilt-driven process. So we're always putting guilt on ourselves. And so, but anyway, so just remember that, you know, Liza and I are siblings. We turned out okay, I think. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But I can 100% assure you that's why both of us are in the special education field. But but there are concerns. And again, as we go through, we have a few slides on concerns and then opportunities. And as we go through these, just know that we're not saying that your child or you as a sibling will experience all of these. These are just trends based on lots and lots of research. And these are just the trends, kind of the high flyers that they noticed patterns and among siblings. So, but one thing, you know, there could be resentment. And I will wholeheartedly admit that I do have some resentment. And, you know, I just moved out of state, and here I am buying a house, and I'm like, oh, you know, I have to make sure that I buy a house that that my brother can live in, that he would be comfortable in. You know, it's not, my life is not just solely about me. Darn it. But so there is that twinge of resentment that I don't have that normal per se adult life. And as a child, I don't recall call consciously having resentment, but as an adult looking back, I can see, like, you know, sometimes when I was angry or something, that it may have been like, oh, I wanted my parents' attention. And my brother was basically nonverbal until 6 or 7, very self-injurious. We had he would escape the house. We had deadbolt locks at the top of our doors, and it was all hands on deck in keeping him safe in the house. So it did take a lot, you know, and the one-way relationship, you know, my brother doesn't call me up to say, hey, how was your day? You know, and I do feel some in not having that brother-sister relationship. As a single woman, when he lived with me, it would have been nice to have him take on some, like, hey, you want to go look at my car, or, you know, can you fix this in the house for me or something? It would have been nice to have that brother type of figure to help me as a brother. But and again, a reminder, we're going to talk about ways that we've can help support these too. But increased responsibilities, the need to protect. I think specifically, you know, if you have siblings a little that might do things together, say they're at the same school site, right? Or they play with the same kids in the neighborhood that need to protect. And then but it goes on for, like, I have the need to protect my brother now. You know, I almost went ballistic on a Disney on Ice, the little cart selling the souvenir people, when they totally intentionally did not give him his correct change, because I saw the whole interaction go down, but I was trying to stay back and let him feel some independence. And yeah, then I went, yeah, I went to security is who I went to, but so that need to protect for sure. Young kids, you can see it. And I think I fall into this parentification role that I felt at a very early age in my teens, to that I was taking care of my brother. And I still feel like I do play more of kind of a parental role in his life, although I really, really try hard to, when he lived with me, it was like, I am not your mother. I am your sister. I don't want to be your mother, you know, on the stuff that I knew he was capable of doing. So there are increased responsibilities that come along with that, you know. Peer issues and embarrassment. You know, young kids have this, like, extreme desire to conform. Now, I'm not talking the teenage years, because that kind of shifts. They don't want to conform necessarily, but if you're looking at more elementary, tween kind of, they don't want to stand out, right? That's just a natural developmental feeling for young children. So the fact that maybe they have a sibling that's different can impact them. And, you know, we say embarrassment, but it is, you know, if it can be, you know, and parents, I'm sure you can feel it sometimes too. If you're in the grocery store and a child starts having a meltdown or something, you know, you can feel embarrassment, and it's okay to feel embarrassed. You know, that was something we were talking about in our breakout group, that having such two conflicting emotions at the same time, where just because I'm embarrassed by this person doesn't mean that I love them any less, and that I'm any less of a person. So that, like, it's okay to feel that way. It doesn't mean that you love them any less. You just have to learn how to cope and deal with that. Now, me and as an adult, I'm like, no, that's your problem. If you don't like that he makes this noise or whatever my brother does in public, like that's on you, not him. So learn to live with it. But it is something, you know, and to consider if your children, you're typically developing and not typically developing children go to the same school together. We'll talk a little more, give you some ideas on how to support that. So, and we can go on, Liza. And I'm going to need to speed this up because I think I'm taking too much time. Communication, there is a need for age appropriate information for children, you know, from young age to older age. You as a family can determine what would be appropriate information to share. Sibs can feel a fear, safety, and a lot of that can stem from a lack of information. Young kids might think, will I catch it? Or I think I have what she has. I'm an autism specialist now, and I'm like, wait, is this an autism characteristic? Am I on the spectrum? So I'm always like self-assessing myself, and then just true fear and safety if there is aggression in the home. You know, that wasn't an issue in my home growing up because my brother was so much younger than us. But yeah, I know I've dealt with several families where it's an issue about having safe space and so forth. And then the isolation, you know, parents, if you have a child with special needs, you get it. I don't have to tell you about the isolation that can be felt. You know, it's the same for Sibs, where, you know, I didn't realize until later on in my life, I started connecting about the time my brother was 2 or 3 and was really, really like impossible almost to take him out in public. That correlated with the same times that I was no longer doing after school sports and campfire girls and these kind of other activities. Although it was never said to me that it was because of that, but I'm looking back, I'm sure it is. So, all right. Good. Young kids can feel guilt, you know, maybe like, oh, I don't know, I put their pacifier in their mouth after it had dropped on the floor. So maybe I gave it to them. And then they can also feel guilt if they're the younger Sib, the Sib is younger, that as they pass them developmentally, they can feel guilty. And we've talked a lot about future concerns about future care, but we also, you know, especially in genetic things, well, my children have the same. I'm in that right now with my daughter, who's in a committed relationship, and they're looking at marriage and having one person identified in our family with autism. I feel like there are others that were not of the age where they got identified, but her risk factors for having a child with autism are higher. So we look into some ways to deal with that. But and then the loss and the grief, you know, Liza, you really touched on this some, but if you're looking at if the person with the disability has a degenerative disease, then or condition, they dealing with that process of seeing their sibling in that state. So, and then I shared the missing the typical sibling relationship. And then the pressure to achieve. A straight A student must be perfect. right? I'm me, 100% right there. And I did not do it intentionally. This is where I say I learned a lot about myself after reading this stuff. I just intuitively knew that my parents were exhausted. And I just wanted to be perfect because I did not want to be a burden for them. So us Sibs are really good about seeing that in our families. So when we say pressure to achieve, it's not that you parents put the pressure on, but that is something very common for us as Sibs to feel, is that we have to be perfect so we don't add anything else to our parents' plate.
What do you think, Nikki? Do you want to do the breakout room, or do you want to do it large group with how we have it right now based on time?
Yeah, what do we have, 8 or 8:30, Leanne?
8:30 is what we have scheduled for.
I feel like we have a lot of chat going on. Can we do like just a 5-minute breakout room? That way,
Sure.
maybe everybody can get their things heard. Does that work?
All right.
Shorten it.
Yeah. All right.
And can you pull us back at 5 minutes so we don't get lost?
I can. All right. I'm gonna.
And then the question is, what is your most prevalent concern for or about siblings?
Okay. Did you guys get the notice?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
For the sake of time, shall we jump right back in it, Liza?
You got it. I'm sharing it right now. Hold on. Okay. So opportunities.
All right. So along with the bad comes the good, right? If we want to call the other one bad. Sibs can show higher levels of maturity than peers their own age. And that can be because they are, there can be more responsibilities put on them. They can have more patience than a typical child. And they've made more sacrifices. So the world isn't all about them. They can see that, I always like to say that my brother taught me not to take for granted the little things in life, and to really be able to see like something small, like he initiated putting his arm around the first time he initiated putting his arm around my daughter to take a picture with her, where he's one that doesn't really care for hugs, but I asked at her college graduation to take a picture, and he went over next to her and put his arm around her. The little stuff that the typical person may not even think about, but wow, do we really celebrate those small things, right? So, and then the tolerance that is learned, that there's just lots of different ways to be in this world, right? And because I talk with a device, because I, use a wheelchair, because I have extreme sensory issues and communication needs and behavior issues, that you're still in this world and you're still meaningful. So understanding that. This, I like to share a real quick story that when I used to coach Special Olympics swimming, was the first thing I coached in Madera County. And my daughter kind of grew up just alongside the swimming pool, and she'd be at the end during practices as a 3-4-year-old clapping for the athletes as they were doing their swimming laps at practice times. And she used to always say, I want to do Special Olympics. I want to do Special Olympics. And I told her, you have to be 8. You have to be 8, thinking that by the time she was 8, she would kind of understand what Special Olympics was. Nope. It broke my heart on her 8th birthday that I had to explain to her what a disability was, because she grew up truly not seeing disabilities. It's quite astounding when I talk to her, like she just does not see them. So, and she's in the field working as a social worker. So, but yeah, so that's a great opportunity that not all children get. Appreciation, perspective. I talked about that a little bit, seeing what others can't see. You know, having a family, understanding more the meaning of family and support, right? We were all hands on deck. We knew, man, we were such great communicators, as me and my mom and my sister. My dad drove trucks, so he was gone most of the week, but I learned to communicate, and the need for every person in our family to really come together to support. So, and then health, you know, if you have a child with significant health needs, you know, you may not take your health for granted. Like, wow, I am able to breathe on my own, or, you know, I can eat stuff that most children wouldn't even think of, right? So you do have appreciation for that. It kind of shifts your perspectives on what's important in life. And then vocational, I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier. Most of us Sibs tend to go into helping for professions. And I will say, those of us that didn't on our board, because California Sibs is a nonprofit, but those of us on our board that are not in the helping professions per se are doing it on the side. You know, they're somewhat involved on the side, but yeah. And then there is, you know, the element of inspiration, like, wow, like if my sister can go through that, I can do this, right? Comparing it kind of puts hurdles and obstacles in life in perspective, right? So, and sense of humor, learning to laugh at things as a coping mechanism. You know, parents and professionals that sometimes, like, you just have to laugh. You know, I work now at a extreme, a separate school here for children with really extreme behavioral needs, and one of the aides got a child with feces on, and he like grabbed her and got some on her skin, and then she kept smelling it all day, and then she had an IEP meeting to go to at the end of the day, and we were teasing her about stinking up the IEP meeting, you know. So you just, yeah, it's a coping mechanism, and you know, I will say, can somebody not in the field or not aware of it may not see the humor in it, but those of us that are in it understand it as a coping mechanism. So again, the pride, optimism, the ability to see abilities, not disabilities, and we can be involved in advocacy, local, state, national leadership. You know, Liza and I are here for local advocacy. You know, we feel that you know, every child deserves a parent that understands them, right? So, and then California Sibs are at the state. I also sit on the National Sibling Leadership Board. So we have another board member that is like really working on like sexual abuse and has started a foundation. So siblings can be some of the strongest advocates. Let's go back to that protective conversation earlier. So, and then the loyalty may argue at home, but loyal outside. That's a pretty, go ahead, you can go on. That's pretty typical, I think, of any sibling relationship. So, all right, shall we go into our next breakout then? And
yeah, 5 minutes.
Yeah. Leanne, will you pull us back again? Rachel, I don't know, Liza, did you address Rachel's comment in the chat in your breakout perhaps about what if the SIB is being more challenging than perfect? Did that come up?
No, I missed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So sometimes instead of trying to be perfect, because you want to be seen, right? And if you see that a lot of attention is going to your sibling for exhibiting behaviors that are contextually, maybe inappropriate, then you might then start to do them yourself, like for that, I would probably want to make sure that I'm drawing attention, catching all of the good and wonderful times that SIB is having, and trying getting ahead of them needing to act out in order to get attention, and just flood attention, find all those little moments, so that they don't have to work as hard to try and be seen at those times. That's a strategy they've learned to try and get attention. So try and find other ways to provide it.
Yeah, I could see that being much more prevalent the closer in age the children's are to each other, where, I had such a gap. So I somewhat had an understanding it was different needs for attention. But if they're a year or two apart,
that's hard no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, siblings, no matter what, at that gap are gonna, be bumping heads and running into conflict and still love each other, but still have those things. And yeah, there's a lot of different things that can influence those relationships, right? So there's like the gap in age, there's distance. So like for me, my parents were divorced, and so my mom and my stepdad and then my dad. So every week I would go to my dad's house, and so my brother would be at home with my mom and my stepdad. And so he had some one-on-one time, and I was able to get some different one-on-one time. So I was maybe affected a little bit differently because of that. And then, gender too, like that sometimes comes into play in families with, the sibling relationship and things like that, and responsibilities and everything. So, yeah.
And there can be those learned behaviors, right? Where a sibling is literally copying the behaviors they might be seeing from their sibling with a disability, right? But do you ladies think that if a family is really struggling with it, maybe some counseling, getting some individual help for that support for that typical developing sibling that might really be struggling?
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly an option. And, so that you can help understand and support that child and that relationship. Right.
Yeah. Even bringing up the conversation. I think we had somebody at our last meeting, and they had talked to their child afterwards, and their child was like, yes, these are they had asked, like, is this what you're feeling? And it was like, yes. And like sobbing, like, you hear me, you see me, that this is going on for me. Because a lot of times a SIB may not know that they can even bring those things up, or
not even understand.
Right.
I mean, it's a younger, an elementary age student that was, and they don't understand what they're feeling. Like, oh, like my parents just labeled this feeling for me. And so,
yeah, and that could be really powerful and, you know, open up space for them to kind of talk about it, or at least know that they're not alone in how they're feeling.
yeah, yeah. Liza, I think this is great to segue into the next slide. I'm catching up on your comments here, Rachel.
Okay, so we have the Sibs across the life phases. And, you know, one of the things is you want to make sure you see the Sib as their own person outside of their relationship to their sibling too. So making sure that you're taking time for them individually. But some of the things that we see at different stages in their life, and like we were saying earlier, like this isn't true or predictive of all Sibs in every experience. But these are some things that you might see and some things that they might need in response. So at the preschool age, resenting time away from parents. So if you are having to tend to your one child that maybe has a disability, and that takes away time for the other one. So that might be one of the issues that really kind of comes up, and they may not understand that. Prone to extremes, like, so we talked about the acting out or acting perfect. And one of the things that you can do at this age is, like Nikki was saying, they may not even have the word. So finding a way to share information that is developmentally appropriate for them, and just starting to talk about that. And they may see that there's a difference and there's these things going on, but they don't really know how to respond to it. So just starting the conversation. And then quality time alone with parents. This doesn't have to be like every day at a set time or even every week. Like the quality time can just be something special that you two do. And it could be like going out to the park together and it's just the two of you, and they get some time alone with you as a parent. And you know, even if it's like 10 minutes, like we're going to have some outside time right now. Maybe as our family, we can't go anywhere, but or you're going to cook with me. Like maybe you want to learn how to do some baking and stuff. And so just trying to find ways to embed some of that one-on-one in there, knowing that every moment it is special, and it doesn't have to be every moment that is, you know.
Liza, I can share, looking back, one thing that really meant a lot to me and is I got 1 day a year to my mom to herself, 1 day. And that was before school started. We would go over to Monterey, we would go to the outlets, and we would go shopping for school clothes. But it was just 1 day a year. And the impact that 1 day had on me is substantial. When I look back, like those are the times that I really value with my mom being, and this was probably junior high and high school years. So,
Yeah.
so it doesn't, I know parents, you're exhausted but find what works for you, you know, even if it is just 1 day a year.
At the elementary school age, so we had talked earlier about how they might feel possibly embarrassed about the differences. They might be upset that sibling gets away with things. So that's, you know, you might see some behaviors arise from that. So for the embarrassment, sometimes it's just really learning about how to talk about it with their peers, and how to address bullying when that happens, because they might, you know, some of you mentioned that your child might stand up for their sibling, but really making sure that they know the language to use and that they feel supported, and it'll help them be more confident in those moments where maybe they have to say something, and they don't have to come up with it on their own, that they've been able to talk through that with you. And then sometimes
if I can add real quick, just to that, you know, they may not see that their brother or sister, they may not have that true perception yet that their brother or sister, there's something different, right? So having that, like, this is how you put words to to this, because someone can come up to him on the playground and like, why is your brother doing that? And you're like, what do you mean? That's just what my brother does, you know? So kind of preempting those questions for them to help them understand that, you know, your brother does this, other people may not understand that. And here's what you can say if somebody comes up to you, kind of preparing them for what might come to them, because they may not see that behavior as unique or different. So
yeah, or if they do and it gives them anxiety because maybe they don't know how to talk about it and they know that their peers are noticing it, it at least gives them a starting point. So
yeah.
So at the teen years, you might have where they're starting to feel a little future oriented concerns about that, like, what is this going to mean for me? What's going to happen, you know, going forward? What kind of responsibilities am I going to have? How is this going to change my life? You know, teens are in their head kind of processing all of that, as natural teens do, you know, teens do. And you might have them possibly experience guilt about their own life experiences, especially if they're like going through like rites of passage that a lot of people do, such as getting their license, graduating, getting their diploma, going out on their first dates and things like that. And they might feel like, oh, I get to go through this, but my sibling doesn't get to go through that, you know. And I've thought about that for my brother on many occasions. You know, he's also very clear at saying like, I'm not interested, you know. But maybe when he was younger, maybe he would have been, and what would that have meant to him? And how do we also make sure that rites of passages are provided as opportunities too, you know, so that there are more options for their sibling to go through. So opportunities to participate. So when you're feeling anxious about the future, like Nikki was saying earlier, maybe being able to sit in those IEP meetings, you start to learn some of the language, you start to learn, okay, this is what it looks like, what he's going through. I'm learning a little bit more about what his needs are. It starts at that kind of level. I also was somebody that at a very early age started to go to my brother's IEPs and go to trainings on autism, because I was like, I need to know about this. And then role models and trusted peers. So you were saying, Leanne, like, is there someone that they can talk to? And that might be a counselor, that might be a family member or a friend, someone that they can start to have those conversations with, where they don't feel, they may feel like if they bring these things up to a parent, they might be judged by saying that, or they might feel shame about feeling the way that they're feeling through this. And so somebody that would be safe for them to talk to and kind of let some of that out. And then maybe finding ways to, if that isn't you as the parent, ways to bring that home too and start to have those conversations.
And Liza, real quick, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Nikki.
I was just gonna, real quick, I think a lot of times at this age, and it might be in the next age span also, but like, it's okay. It is okay to have your own life. It is okay to go away to college. You know, I was planning on going away to college and did not, because I did not want to leave my brother. You know, there were other things going on in my family at the time. It wasn't just solely him, but we were so close. But you know, some kids don't want that responsibility. So, and that's okay, and telling them it's okay, you know, and just going on with another plan. But yeah, I've hear from so many siblings that they kind of put their life on hold, you know, and they were afraid to move away because parents still needed help at the house and caring and so forth. So they had guilt in leaving home at what would be a natural time to leave. So, you know, those are just family discussions and decisions to make together. But you know, if your family decides that, yes, you know, it's, you go away to college or just move out on your own or something, that, you know, that is okay, because we can have a lot of guilt about that. Like I had a lot of guilt in my brother going back to live with my parents and me going on to pursue my higher education. There's a lot of guilt in that.
And
but
I would say that starting to have those conversations of it's okay before you get to that point, right? So when they're younger, it's okay that you feel this way. It's okay that you don't want to do this right now. There might be sometimes, you know, where the family needs to, like, we all need to get through this together. So we're all putting in the time and the effort right now, right? But then making sure that there are times where maybe it's like, you could say like, is this something, do you want to help with this or do you don't? Like start to cultivate the it's okay to also have choice in your life. Might be a good way to fuse that in at younger ages.
I love that, Liza. And I just was going to point out real quick too that depending on what the disability is, there are many youth organizations designed, you know, for that support for siblings. For instance, you know, I know in particular, like there's an organization that has for rare diseases that has a youth alliance. And again, that's all focused on supporting the youth, whether you have a parent or a sibling, you know, with that disability. And so by all means, Google and see what is out there. You know, there are lots of resources available, especially post-COVID. A lot of resources have gone virtual now, like you mentioned, the Sib meetups, Nikki. So yeah, check that out, parents.
Sib Shops actually has virtual too available.
So for adulthood, there's the questions about future planning that and the multiple caregiving and the concerns about just being me, like Nikki had mentioned earlier. We talked in one of our groups earlier about the guidance on how to navigate the system. That's probably one of the most challenging things when you take on caregiving as a sibling is what, I don't even know where to begin. I don't know what to do. So either finding resources or starting to prepare those, or like we mentioned, we're working on the OSK, like there's a need for it. You're not alone in feeling that. And so also talking to the experts and finding some people. If you find a sibling that has gone through this before, latch on. We're always talking in our group like, hey, this is coming up. You know, we couldn't find my brother's social security card at first. He didn't know his social security number. What are we going to do? Because everything needs a social security card, you know? So like knowing who you can lean on to ask those questions and help guide you through that. And then coping mechanisms for these new feelings. It's okay to experience the transitions that you're having as an adult going through this too. Sometimes I think we feel like we've got to put on this armor of, I've got this, I can do this. And it's also okay to know that your life is shifting as you're going through this, and to give yourself the space to experience whatever emotions you need to. And then for older adults, the end of life concerns, there's the end of my life, right? That I'm worried about. What happens when I'm gone and my brother doesn't have anybody? There's the end of the parent's life. So what happened when my mom and my stepdad died? Like, how did that change things? And then my sibling, like, what if he dies or needs additional, you know, like, so how do I prepare for that when I'm gone? You know, so those are some of the things that we're thinking about. And again, it's all about finding those resources and supports. So this older age of life is really about making sure you cushion yourself with the information and people that you need. And so here, I know that we're running on time here. Many parents provide unpaid caregiving. So just to be aware that that is going to be shifting. 40% of parents spend more than 80 hours per week in caregiving, which is largely unpaid. For some Sibs, that may not be their option. They may not want to be the caregiver, and that is okay too. It is okay to say, in order to be able to love and care for my family and my sibling or whoever, that these are choices that we need to make in our family, and the caregiving is maybe going to be done by somebody else. So making sure that there's room for siblings to voice if they're not okay handling it or prepared to handling it, and to do that in a respectful way, and to still look for, okay, so if you're not prepared to handle that, then where do we need to look? How do we find a good caregiver? What are the different options? So yeah, I think that that would be a big one, because you can't just assume that because there is a sibling there, that that's their obligation and it's their responsibility. As much as they may feel that they do have that responsibility, you can't require that. So that would just be a big one there. So the decision-making, living situation, all of that stuff, make sure you understand that. More than 1 in 10 have done no planning. And again, even if you think planning has happened, it doesn't mean that it really has. And so you don't want to find out. That could be very costly and emotional and traumatic. And so take care of that. Let's see here. So this next one is, there is no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives. So the diversity of family dynamics and demographics are going to directly impact all members of the family, not just the parents, not just the individual with the disability, not just the Sib, right? It's happening to everybody at the same time. And these are some of the different ways that it can happen or be affected for different people. So opportunities, some people may have, it may be easier for them to come by opportunities than it is for other people. If you have more opportunities, you're going to be able to make different choices with what you do with your family, right? So that can really shift how your family is going to like go through the next several years. Communication, going through this, it may build connection and bring family together. It also might push family apart, right? There's some families that it's really hard to come to a consensus or agreement about how to best handle something. And I know that I had different ideas of maybe what I wanted my brother to be doing than maybe his parents did. And so those are all things to navigate. Perception. So perception from the community and other family members or friends, you know, there's that like judgment that you may experience, whether that be good or bad, but that affects how we see ourselves in our daily lives. I know that I constantly carry a lot of like shame about things that I should be doing better. I could be doing better. So for reassurance, the sense of community, right? So if you and your unit, your family unit, or you as an individual feel connected or you feel alone through this, is going to really affect, you know, how you engage and interact with other people, what you're able to get done. And then for time, some people are more affluent with time and some people, you know, are without time. And so do you have family support? Well, that shifts your time. Are you working or do you stay at home? That shifts your time. What are your priorities? Are your priorities to, you know, make sure that dinner is on the table and it like, what are the things that you're going to focus on for your family needs? And they may impact each of you differently. And then the information. So access to information and resources may provide or limit access to the resources and long-term effects. So if you know who to call, if you know what person to ask for, that can definitely move you ahead in the line or hold you back. So those are some of the main points there. So this one here, and we're just finishing up, we wanted to have you kind of do, write one takeaway from tonight, and don't put it in the chat yet. We were going to ask you to take about 30 seconds to think about it And then you're gonna, when we say go, everybody can hit, enter. But consider a sibling of an individual with a disability may be affected by each of these themes that I just talked about. Think about their role in the family, their unique experiences they might have. Think about their past, their present, and their future. And think about your relationship with this sibling. Are you a parent? Are you a community support provider? Are you the sibling we've been talking about tonight? So what does this information mean to you? And what is one thing that you take away from our conversation? So go ahead and take 30 seconds and put something in the chat, and then we'll let you know when it's time to release it. Okay, about 5 more seconds. Okay, go ahead and release it in the chat. Let's see what we have here. Opportunity to improve my family's life and make things easier. The need for planning and communication.
Good.
I hear you, I understand you. Yes. Well, thank you all. Did I get all of them there? Need for planning. How to better support the disabled person and their family, not to feel guilty about the role that you take as a sibling or caregiver.
Yes.
Yeah. The need for more support groups.
Yeah.
Yes. And for those that want to start them, please do. And, reach out to your sibling, the CalSibs groups, chapters, if there's one in your area. Attend our meetings. We can help put you in. What, Nikki?
Liza, put the next slide up.
Okay, hold on.
Because you're right on it. And one more.
Yeah, I know I'm getting there.
There you go.
So these are the different ways. We have a Facebook, an Instagram, and a Twitter. You can go to our californiasibs.org. We have the meetups on there. We also are starting to post information about the online Sibs shops that we're connected with. And so you can go there. And then the Facebook, there are different, I haven't checked out these different groups, but I hear they're active.
Can't, because we're not like a Sib team. I will say for this SibNet, I'm very active on that. SibNet is a very, very active Facebook group for adults, and you'll see venting and you'll see celebrations and both on there. Sib Teen, I will say, is specific for teenagers, and the Sibling Support Project kind of who runs Sib shops kind of organizes these Facebook pages. And I have been told by them that the Sib Teen Facebook page is moderated, like it is supervised by adults. So.
Okay. Any questions?
No, I just want to thank you both for all this information you shared. Thank you for your time. I know everyone's overworked and underpaid. So thank you. Thank you for volunteering to do this. We appreciate it.